Welcome to the Awakened Living podcast. This is my first podcast episode. I'm actually super excited to share everything that I am going to share here in this episode. This first episode, I thought I would really focus on my journey, more like an update, all the things I've experienced the past few years, because I've been very quiet on social media and I'm just now getting back into everything, posting content, sharing my journey, sharing what I've been learning, sharing my voice again. So I've been on a really deep, dark, painful journey with my oral health. It really almost took my life, and I have a lot to share here. We'll be going over how to cure cavities, how to prevent cavities, the best oral health routine, the best mouthwash, the best, literally everything you can think of. It's going to be covered here. I have about 30 questions I'm going to go over after I share my story. So yeah, let's dive right into it. And thank you guys for listening and being here with me. So to start off, the Awaken Living podcast is all about health, longevity, spirituality, and orgone energy since, I run a pyramid company and I have for years, and I have hundreds of students all around the world who I've taught how to build pyramids. So the main focus, because this is the first episode, I think it's appropriate for me to say this, the main focus of the podcast is all about deep spirituality, deep truth, the latest in health, and then orgone energy as well, and also relationships, and we kind of tie all this together. And that's why I wanted to call it the Awakened Living podcast, because my goal and intention is to improve the lives of all my listeners, everyone who's listening and tuning into this podcast, help you improve the quality of your life in all areas, especially when it comes to health and spirituality. I have a lot to share. That's kind of my field, my expertise. So I can't wait to really get out there with the podcast, episodes every Monday. And yeah, so let's dive right into my health. So to start off, I want to give a little background on me, my health, my oral history, because this plays a huge factor in whether or not you're ever going to have tooth decay or cavities or any type of oral issue. So it's been shown in studies, across the world that over 80% of people have caries disease, which is dental disease, or gum disease. Pretty much everybody out there has some form of oral issue, most of which don't even know it. And this is extremely important because oral health is tied into everything. The oral microbiome is similar to the gut microbiome. It's really all one microbiome, but the oral microbiome is potentially even more important than the gut microbiome because it regulates everything in your life. Your teeth have a meridian that go to pretty much all the major organs in your body. So if one tooth is messed up, it's going to throw off that organ as well. And halitosis, that's the clinical definition of bad breath, can also be caused by holding your tooth back or, speaking wrongly towards things or other people. There's an emotional cause too to a lot of this, and in the spiritual community, people like to focus on, it's always an emotion, always this. I try to take the middle ground approach because if somebody is sick and they have a health issue, specifically a mouth issue, I'm not just going to jump and say, some childhood trauma caused that. I think that's really stretching it in a lot of cases. In some cases, that very well could be the case, but you have to look at all angles. You got to look at their physical health, their mental health, emotional health, and their history. Any person who has any health issue. So I don't think it's very smart to say that, everything is just a repressed emotion or everything is, caused by an emotional trauma or an event. That's definitely a factor, and that should always be addressed, but it's not always only that is what I'm you may have had a childhood like me where you were a C-section baby. I'm a C-section baby. If you're not birthed vaginally, you don't even have a microbiome. That's something that people don't talk about. So you're going to grow up with potentially gut issues, mouth issues, and I also wasn't breastfed because my mom had hepatitis C and she didn't want to potentially pass that to me, which I understand, even though I grew up without, being breastfed, which definitely affects a child's development and brain development and jaw development because, what forms your jaw is you latching on to, your mother's breast and getting those vitamins from, and, amino acids, stem cells, everything from that, that all, affects your oral health for the rest of your life. And, if you're a C-section baby and weren't breastfed like me, you're in a pretty bad position to, have good oral health. So if you were like me in that way, you likely, grew up with health issues. I also grew up with a lot of health issues. I never had anything major, but I grew up with little issues, almost like these little hooks that were always affecting me. And I'm nearly on the tail end of that now, getting all of those hooks off my back. because I've been nurturing my body and learning to take care of myself for the past 7, 8 years. I've had to learn a lot of hard lessons when it comes to health. I didn't have any help. I had nowhere to go. I didn't have any answers. So I've been on this journey for a long time now, almost half my life, just looking for answers, looking for what's going to help me, whether it be something emotional, whether it be the best foods, the best supplements, really like all angles. I'm trying to look at this so I can be my best self ultimately. And so to start off, I wasn't really raised properly. And if you're not raised properly when it comes to nutrition, I'm talking about the way you're birthed and being breastfed and just the way you're emotionally nurtured and physically nurtured as a child. So if you don't have those things, you might grow up more than likely with caries disease, which is most people. What is it? I think over half of births now are all C-sections. This is totally by design because it keeps people sick for most of their life. Because most of those people never end up pursuing a life of like holistic health and alternative medicine. They end up being with big pharma for life, a lifetime subscriber to big pharma. And you don't want to end up like that. My goal with all this information is to steer you in the complete opposite direction. I think big pharma is okay in emergencies, like if you break your bone or whatever. But even then, even like if I broke my arm, I wouldn't rush to the hospital. I know that might sound crazy to people, but I would see what I can do first. And if I really can't do anything and it's an emergency, then of course I'll go to big pharma. But I wouldn't take antibiotics. I wouldn't take any of that shit that they prescribe. It's more just like only for dire emergencies, and it's good to know that that's there because, we can't do everything ourselves. There's very few cases I would ever be okay with going to the hospital or big pharma, but those, also play their role. And a lot of the doctors and things like that, are totally brainwashed, but I also have compassion for them because a lot of them just want to help, especially the nurses. And I have friends who are nurses too, which has helped me grow in my compassion because I used to be like, oh, fuck big pharma, I hate all this stuff. And I, still fuck big pharma, no doubt about that. But all I'm saying is that in some cases, it's necessary. And my goal with this is to not steer you to big pharma at all, but actually in the complete opposite direction and give you the tools you need to use and improve your life and health and your oral health so you never end up going, to the dentist for a bunch of extractions like I had to get, so you never end up in the hospital with an issue caused by a tooth infection or something like that, I never went to the hospital, thank God it didn't get to that, but I've been fortunate. So your history is really important when it comes to oral health. My history is that, I wasn't birthed the ideal way, I wasn't breastfed, I had crappy formula, which caused very early on mineral dysregulation, which is a huge component in oral health and your teeth is, your ability to regulate calcium. If you're, bathing in EMFs and tap water your whole life, your ability to regulate minerals probably is not optimal, more than likely, unless you have just super good genes and no problems. But most people do have problems, even ones with good genes, because these environments we're in and raised in aren't natural to us. They're not life-giving to us. So it's important that, you address your history, whether or not you have any oral health issues, so you can ultimately see, what it is you need to nurture yourself. If you were breastfed and raised in a way where you got great food, all the nutrients you needed, you may not have any issues. But some people do. Some people who have perfect health their whole life still get dental issues. There's so many reasons for this. There's also human history, like jaws have been shrinking the past 200 years, the past couple generations. This is shown by this guy named Weston A. Price, who I highly recommend. If you're into dental health or any kind of health, you should look into his stuff. So Weston A. Price was a vegan, and he actually traveled the world looking for tribes and native cultures that, adopted veganism. And he's one of the reasons I actually stopped being vegan, because he didn't find any tribes that were fully vegan ever. I'm open to the idea of like Tartaria, and a lot of these people were fruitarian back then, a couple hundred years ago, in the recent worldwide reset, which I'll be talking about in a whole nother podcast. That's a whole nother topic. But in this modern day, there's no culture, there's no history of anyone who is straight up vegan. There's always fish, there's always honey, bee products. And so Weston A. Price traveled the world as a vegan looking for almost confirmation bias, for confirmation that his way of life was the right way. But actually he found the opposite. He found tribes that were basically self-sourcing. They hunted, and they had no sense of cavities. Sorry, not no sense of cavities, but no history of cavities, no history of any problems with oral health. And they all have perfect jaws. You can look at Amish communities or, tribes that still exist in Africa. Even the very few Native American tribes left, they have zero dental decay. Never anything. Their kids don't get cavities. They're not raised with cavities. They don't get dental decay once they're in their 20s and 30s. They have perfect teeth for their whole life. And there's a reason for this, because Western culture has made our jaws shrink. Jaws are wider. When jaws are wider, they can hold all of your teeth. They hold all of those minerals, right? Because if your jaw is fully wide, you're fully nourished, We are chronically deficient over generations. So 2 generations ago, your grandma probably didn't have many cavities, or maybe her grandma didn't. But as things became more westernized, everybody started to get cavities because we were disconnected from nature. We're no longer grounded all day long. We're no longer eating the right foods. We're no longer getting proper nutrition. Hardly anyone. We're no longer bathing in natural water that, regulates our minerals properly. We're no longer doing any of these things. Everything's been completely inverted and tossed out the window. And we're left here with these health issues. Almost every single person in the world, over half the world, has health issues, chronic health issues. And it's now even to the point where some people are saying 1 in 2 has cancer. And this is all by design. It's all for a reason. The resetters of this world wanted to profit off of everybody's sickness and create a sick world and be able to be in control of it. And, that's one thing I really want to speak about a lot on this podcast, because it's a very real thing. And we need to do what we can to prevent sickness and nurture ourselves and ultimately focus on what gives us life and what gives us health. And so with Weston A. Price, he basically traveled the world looking for a vegan society, like I said, and he couldn't find one. So this opened up a huge door for him, a big rabbit hole, where he discovered that all these tribes didn't have any dental issues. And so he basically started this thing called the Weston A. Price Foundation. There's a lot of info on their Instagram and their website. They have a lot of articles. I've learned a lot from them. And it's kind of just one of the tools in my big old tool shed of, health information and who I study. I like to read a lot of different things and even opposing opinions, and then I can discern what feels right for me. I think that if you're always looking for confirmation bias and to be right about what you think and what you're assuming, you might be left with the wrong answers. So it's always important to be open to both sides. Even if it's an opinion you hate, try to at least understand where that's coming from. When it's coming from another person, you can still dislike it. But what this does is increase your discernment. And so if you're looking to improve your health, this is something that's really important. And so Weston A. Price kind of had his whole world shook. He was vegan. Enough said about that. I was a super passionate vegan for almost 5 years. And if somebody would have told me 5 years ago that I would be here doing this podcast talking about this right now, I would have been so mad. I would have been like, no, I would never be that. I would never not be vegan. I'd never be preaching, a guy like Weston A. Price who promotes a primal diet and an ancestral diet like the Native Americans had. I would think you're crazy. But here I am. And so my point with all this is that our jaws have shrunk. And this leads to dental decay. This is why everybody gets their wisdom teeth out. Another thing with the Amish community and all of these tribes around the world that are still existing today, they don't get their wisdom teeth out either. And they also don't get cavities. So what is the difference between their life and our true human history of being connected to nature in perfect health versus this Western world that we all live in? It's important to address the history of what we've been through in ourselves, but also looking at your parents, looking at your grandparents. Did they get cavities? What age were they when they got cavities? For example, my grandma was 23 and she lost all of her teeth. That's when I lost all of my teeth, when I was 23. So there's very real factors that play a role in your ancestry that I think you should look at. Anybody listening, go and learn about the history of your family's oral health, because that definitely plays a role. How were you raised? What did you eat when you were raised? Did you shower in tap water your whole life? These are really important things. Were you breastfed? Were you born through the vaginal canal so you have a full microbiome? Because all the fluid that is on the walls of the vaginal canal as you come out, that's your microbiome that's formed. And when you're birthed, you're supposed to let that sit into the skin and let it sink into the skin. And you're not supposed to wipe any of that. A lot of doctors, when you're born, they just grab you right out of the womb, C-section. They basically steal you, rob you of your right to, be birthed, and take you out of the womb, which is so traumatic. I remember the day I was born. People think I'm crazy for this, but I literally remember the day I was born. It was so traumatic. And there's a thing called birth trauma, that a lot of people are actually getting into now. I'll get into that on another podcast, but it's really interesting. Birth trauma alone and not being born the right way can actually set you up for so many issues, especially once you're like in your 20s. That seems to be the sweet spot that I've noticed with C-section babies. A lot of kids, they might have issues growing up, but if they're going to have issues, most of the times the worst issues come in the early 20s. And that was my case. Like I said, my grandma lost all her teeth when she was 23, and I almost lost all of my teeth when I was 23. And so that's a little history, of how we got to where we are and my history. So we can take that and then we can go to what that caused for me. So since I wasn't breastfed, since I wasn't born the right way, and since I wasn't nourished properly growing up, standard American diet, all of our parents have good intentions. It's nothing personal, but at the same time, it just is what it is. We were all raised with, nearly all of us, in tap water showers, bathing in chlorine, hot tubs, endless toxins. There's really no balance. It's more toxins getting you overloaded every single day with the tap water. There's nothing else balancing that out, So I basically was born the wrong way and accumulated toxins my whole life, just like most other people. And so now I'm here, been on this health journey, and it's just like, dang, like I accumulated a lot. If you really add it all up, the EMFs, the microplastics and chemicals in the tap water, the pesticide, food, it's really endless. Like, your body is amazing, and I believe the body is amazing, and it can heal from anything, but at the same time, we are human. All those things go somewhere. All those toxins go somewhere, and they need to be addressed if you want to be in the most tip-top health and tip-top shape, especially oral health, because if you have a lot of toxins in your body and you can't regulate minerals, it's gonna be hard for you to keep your mouth alkaline. It's gonna be hard for your teeth to regulate calcium. It's gonna be hard for you to produce enzymes in your saliva. So you might end up with a dry mouth, which is a huge cause of dental decay and cavities. Your teeth basically need to be saturated in saliva all day long. And you need to have a slightly alkaline mouth pH. Slightly acidic, almost neutral. And that's how it needs to be. And you have to have alkalizing things that help you regulate your calcium. But not just that. It's not about just like, alkaline diet, alkaline this. I think a lot of that's BS. But when it comes to neutralizing oral acid, you do need a high pH food or mouthwash or something to help with that. It's good to have that as a part of your regimen. And so I got my first cavity when I was maybe 6. I grew up eating a lot of candy. I don't know why my mom let me eat so much candy growing up. I used to go to the movies with her, and I would drink ices. I would eat a bunch of candy, and that was I loved it. I didn't know any better, but I got so many cavities growing up, and then I lost growing up teeth, my kid teeth, and I grew in new ones. Then I had to get braces, and braces are a whole nother. Braces alone can cause cavities because of the metal that they put into your gums and your teeth, which can cause mineral dysregulation, and also mercury fillings. I've seen countless people only get cavities where they had mercury fillings or where they had braces. Very interesting stuff. So all that should be accounted for too, full on your whole dental history. Everything that's ever been done in your mouth should be taken into account, because this can help you fully prevent anything from happening. And also it can help you tackle any issue you might have currently. I got my braces off in 8th grade. I was super happy because I had a straight smile. And, the reason why people end up getting braces or a retainer to begin with is because their jaw can't hold their teeth. Their jaw can't grow their teeth. They might be overarched, overbite, underbite. These are dental terms. And if you have those things, you might not be able to fully clench your jaw, which can lead to all sorts of issues. Our jaws are messed up. They've shrunk. It causes the teeth to move around and not be even. You'll also see around the world with the Amish people and, tribes in Africa or other tribes around the world that their jaws are straight and their teeth are straight. They have their wisdom teeth. They don't have cavities. Pretty much all their teeth is straight in just about every single person. And that's a big deal. Like, it really comes from the way of life that they live. And I've even read that grounding can get rid of TMJ, which is a jaw issue that pretty much everybody in the Western world has, even kids. And that's another issue to talk about, and we'll get into that. But TMJ is basically, like the locking it can lead to jaw locking. It's basically the inefficiency of the jaw. And so almost everybody has TMJ in the Western world. I know I have it even while I'm making this. Making this podcast, I have a little bit of TMJ still that I'm working on. And this is just caused by, generational things. It's also caused by the lack of grounding. You can ground outside consistently. If you're out grounded all day long for like a couple months straight, your TMJ will go away. And a large reason the Western jaw has shrunk is because we're not grounded. That's one thing beyond nutrition that people tend to look over. You got to be grounded. I mean, if you haven't already, find grounded shoe brands. You want to be grounded all day long. Earth Runners are my favorite brand that I've used the most consistently. I have a code with them. You can use my name, Sher, at earthrunners.com for a discount. The shoes are made of hemp and they're grounded with a copper rod. So when you walk around in a city or around your house, you're grounded. That's a really big deal because you need an electron discharge through your feet into the earth. You need to be connected to that electrical circuit that we've all become disconnected from to fully regulate your minerals. Like you could do all the health stuff. You could do the proper nutrition. You could think the right thoughts. You could have the right habits. But if you're not grounded, it's going to be hard to fully regulate your minerals because that electrical component, that cyclical energy you have with the earth, that circuit, is what regulates a lot of your body, your circadian rhythm, your minerals, and much. So on a very fundamental level, you should be aware of your history and try to be grounded as much as you can, just as the very base level of all health, beyond oral health or anything like that. And so, I got out of 8th grade, my teeth were all fixed, and I looked really good. I was confident because I had a straight smile for the first time in my life with no cavities. And then I grew up a little more, went vegan when I was 16 through 20 and 21. And then by the time I was 21, all my teeth started to fall apart. So 21 through 23, I was born in 2000. So 2021 through 2023 were a really hard time for me. Those are really hard years because of the tooth decay. And when I came off a long fast, when I was vegan, like a 2-month juice fast, I was totally crazy, but I don't regret it. And I noticed that my cavities were forming. It started with one tooth, which I ended up having to get extracted. It's my back molar on the right row on the bottom side. And I had to get that extracted eventually, but that started off as a small cavity, just a black spot, teeny tiny there. Actually, it was gray before it turned black. And, I was doing this guy named Medical Medium protocols at the time, which I think made my mineral dysregulation even worse. I was drinking celery juice all the time, doing celery juice mouthwash. And I'm not necessarily against celery juice. I just think juicing conventional produce from a grocery store is a terrible idea. If you grow your own celery, sure, and you grow it with filtered water and it has good soil, sure, that's another story, but that's not the case for most people. Most juices from conventional produce, you're just drinking tap water sludge. There's like nothing in there that's going to help you. And then you have all the anti-nutrients from the plant, like it's different when the plant is super healthy and you grow it yourself. Those anti-nutrients aren't going to be as deadly because it's more balanced. It's not grown in tap water, all this stuff. So long story short, I was doing celery juice all the time. And I swear that made my mineral dysregulation way worse. It may have, helped my mouth pH, but it didn't help in the long run. My teeth ended up getting a lot worse. I started to get super fatigued and I started to slowly get almost bedridden. And when it was at its worst point in those 2 years, I was totally bedridden. I felt like I was fighting for my life. And I was living in Kauai at the time and I was alone and just really going through it. And for a moment, for like a couple of months, not necessarily a moment, I swear I had healed my teeth. The decay seemed to be reversing. I was taking high doses of vitamin K27. I was coating my mouth in pearl powder. I was grounding all day long. I was doing a lot to really, nurture my mouth. I was drinking raw milk. I was also swishing raw milk over the dental decay, which is a good idea, but you should always clean your mouth after because any kind of sugar is going to stay on your teeth. Lactose is sugar, which is in raw milk. So you definitely want to take that into account. You don't want any carbs sitting on your teeth whatsoever, because that's what creates plaque. And that leads to, dental decay. If that plaque sits on your teeth, eventually it's going to reproduce the bacteria. And that's basically the cavity causing bacteria. I believe 5 different ones, but look up this top bad bacteria that cause oral acidity and cavities. And the bad bacteria, good bacteria thing is questionable. Some people say that's not a thing, but I'll use that for lack of better terms here, just as a reference. So one of them is called spirochetes. That's what I had because I had a x-ray done, or not an x-ray, I'm sorry, a microscope done on my oral saliva. I had what's called spinning rods and then spirochetes. And spirochetes are what cause Lyme disease, and that can be a bacteria that basically populates in your mouth. And if you weren't born with a microbiome like me, and I wasn't breastfed either, which also helps form your microbiome, your mouth is basically a breeding ground for bad bacteria and bugs, so that's really important to take into consideration. So for me, I have to take extra care of my oral health because of that. And I could see clearly under the microscope of my saliva at this biodentist that I went to, clearly I had more of these bad bugs than the good bacteria that the immune system should be putting everywhere throughout your body to fight off infection and any other unwanted organisms. So it's basically like a breeding ground of bad bacteria. There's hardly any supportive bacteria in my mouth. And that's because the way I was born, at the very fundamental. And one might think because I was eating like the perfect whole food vegan diet for a while that I might be getting a lot of good bacteria, but that isn't necessarily the case. That didn't happen for me. I know other people have had different experiences, but with my experience and pretty much every friend that I ever had who was vegan, all had similar issues happen, and none of which are actually vegan anymore. I used to have a lot of friends who were the most passionate vegans and really believed in it and the efficacy of it, and now they just totally aren't that way anymore, because they encountered a lot of dental health issues specifically. And this is a huge thing that it's gaining a lot of traction now. Biodentists are growing. They're making millions because people are really starting to focus and wake up when it comes to this. And so my teeth fell apart after I came off a long fast when I was vegan. I had a ton of deficiencies, couldn't regulate calcium. I was eating a ton of greens, which also can prevent that, especially if you have an issue beforehand. I'm not against technically any food group. I think all of them have their role. But if you have a history of mineral dysregulation and you're eating like only greens and all these raw vegetables and stuff like that, it's only going to make the problem worse in most cases. So that's how it was for me. And I ended up getting a lot of cavities. And I was living in Hawaii, and I also learned about my moldy house that I was living in. I didn't realize how big of a problem that was. And I swear to this day, that made my teeth so much worse because the fungus from mold, if you have a mild fungal infection or a full-on one from mold, from mycotoxicity, that can actually cause cavities just on its own. That fungus does cause cavities. So if that's in your oral microbiome and you don't have any immunity to fight it off, that's going to cause issues. It's going to wreak havoc. So the combination of the severe tooth decay and the mold at the same time almost took me out. Like there were nights where I woke up and couldn't breathe, where I would almost pass out. I would feel so lightheaded. I'd be bedridden. And the thing is, I was bedridden in a moldy house, so that only makes it worse. So is this hamster wheel I was on for a while, and living in Kauai was the best time ever. So I don't regret it at all, and I didn't realize the mold issue until a year after I was living in the home that I was living in. And now I've moved out. I've pretty much healed from the mold and the teeth, and I'll get to all that. But that was a huge factor, I ended up having to fly off of Kauai to a biodentist in Texas for pretty much an emergency tooth extraction because it was so bad. The cavity I had was so bad, and it could have killed me. And actually I have a mutual friend. His name was Herb. I never really got to fully meet him, but this is one of my friend's friends, and he actually died from, I believe, that same exact tooth in his sleep, because it had reached the nerve and, done some damage there. And these problems are really serious and they should be addressed. So if you have any type of cavity, even if it's a little cavity, you want to hop right on it because one cavity leads to another. And if you don't address those things, it can end up really bad and it could kill you in some cases. And I take this stuff really seriously, and it is a really serious thing. If you have an oral health issue, the rest of your body just can't be healthy because let's say you have dental decay. Your teeth are what physically hold the electrons and voltage in your body. If you have tooth decay, you have a drain of voltage. You can no longer fill up the cup of electricity in your body. Imagine the voltage that you hold for your vitality is like a cup of water, right? If there's a hole in the bottom of that cup, the water is going to be constantly draining. So that's what it is. That's what happens when you have tooth decay. The voltage is going to be constantly drained out of your body. Your life force is like sucked from you. That's basically how it feels. And you could even get really spiritual with it. Like these organisms that cause teeth decay are pretty much demons. They suck the energy out of your body, the voltage, like literally. They're parasites. They might not be worms, but they're still parasitic in nature. And Caries disease, which is dental acidity, cavities, all in one thing, which most people have, is caused by these organisms. So anyone with any type of dental decay or oral acidity is dealing with these organisms. It's really like a bug issue when it comes to cavities. And the good news is that it can be cured. There is solutions for it, and I'm going to get into those soon. Now that I've spoken a lot of my journey, but long story short, I had to go get a emergency extraction, and then they recommended I get my wisdom teeth out because they couldn't fit in my jaw, which is true. Sometimes traditional dentists, bullshit you and they just want to make money. So they'll say, oh, you need this tooth extracted when you really don't. So be wary of that. I'd say it's safe to say that no biodentist would do that because they're really looking out for your best. And, so I trusted them. They showed me why it isn't ideal to have my wisdom teeth because I really didn't want to get them out, and I agreed to eventually get them out. So I got that emergency extraction plus all my wisdom teeth out that visit. They gave me an ozone cleaning, and when you get an extraction, if your teeth are that bad, it's important to do what's called PRF therapy. So this is basically your own stem cells treating your mouth. And so what they did was extract the teeth, and they took some blood from me, and then they spin it through this machine. I forget what it's called, but it's called PRF therapy, platelet-rich fibrin. And what this machine does is spin the blood so it coagulates into almost like a tissue-y looking thing, basically like a hardened, it almost looks like a blood clot even. And what they do is they put that coagulated blood, which has stem cells in it from it being stimulated by this machine, I believe that's how, and they take that coagulated blood that's kind of thickened into stem cells, and they put that in the cavity where the tooth was. So, after you get a tooth extracted, there's a big open gum there. And so what they do is they fill that with that, and they take that thickened coagulated blood, and then they put it where the tooth was. So they fill the empty gum cavity with this new fresh stem cells from your own blood, and it actually makes the wound from the extraction and the potential nerve damage, become preventable. So you can actually heal and not have issues down the road because you got a tooth extracted, because that can lead to what's called a cavitation. When you get tooth extractions done the wrong way and then it doesn't heal properly, it's never okay. It's never good to get a tooth extraction regardless of how it's done, but you want to, take safety measures so you don't have any further damage, especially if you have to get a tooth out. It's just sick, or you have a dead tooth, which is the case for many people. And so what the PRF treatment does is basically put fibrin, which is scar tissue, in your empty gum cavities, and it makes you heal a lot quicker. And I remember them putting it in mine. I was barely conscious, because they had to knock me out to do all the extractions. And I ended up healing within, like a week, and I felt so much better. And if I didn't get those PRF treatments in my teeth, all the 6 teeth that I got extracted, I think it was 5 teeth actually, 5 teeth I got extracted, my jaw right now would be in way worse shape. My jaw already feels pretty sensitive from not having those teeth anymore, but I know it would be way more sensitive if I didn't get that PRF treatment. Because my dental health is already super sensitive. My oral microbiome is already super sensitive because of the way I was raised and the lack of like a solid microbiome. So I have to take extra good care of my health, get extra probiotics in, and all that kind of stuff. So for me, the wrong kind of dental treatment could be even fatal for a person like me. So I have to take that into consideration and make sure I'm getting the best of the best treatment with people who consider my history and know exactly, where I'm at, because they saw in my oral microbiome under a microscope how vulnerable I actually am in this arena, when it comes to oral health and my oral microbiome. So it's really taken a lot of work to get myself basically to like level ground with my oral microbiome. And I'm going to go ahead and share a lot of the things that I've used and all the treatments that I've gotten and what I would recommend and how to tackle certain things. And then I'm going to add a questionnaire to this, and we're going to go over all your questions. I got about 30 questions after I shared my podcast launch and my tooth journey on Instagram the other day. And I'll be going through all the questions here in a moment. So to kind of pick up where I left off, so I got the PRF treatment, I got extractions, they did a cleaning and like an ozone cleaning and some like acupressure to help me heal faster. And then I went back to Kauai. And for a while, like a month or so, I was doing a lot better. The ozone treatment really helped because it takes out all that bacteria. If you guys don't know what ozone is, I'm going to do an entire podcast on ozone alone because I solely believe it is one of the best things you can do for your health, if not the best, because it's just so universal. There's so many things you could do. There's so many things you can, even heal fully with. If you have issues that are kind of like dragging along in the background, ozone can take those out fully. And so this includes oral issues as well. So the biodentist that I went to, Nunnally and Freeman Owens, a lot of like big biohacker people go to that dentist. That's actually how I found it. But Nunnally and Freeman Owens in Marble Falls, Texas, shout out to them. If you end up going to them, let them know that I sent you. But anyways, they're really great people. I felt so taken care of. They're like such a motherly group of people that just really like nurtured me back to health in those moments that I was there. So much gratitude for them because they totally saved me, and my oral health was doing a bit better. I still had a ton of decay. Don't get me wrong. I was not in the best, place still, but the worst part of the decay was addressed. So I got the teeth extracted. They gave me a cleaning. And they also showed that they can reduce the spirochetes and spinning rods or whatever cavity-causing bacteria that you have. They can reduce it up to 80 to 90% in one session of ozone. One session. So if you're doing ozone treatments at home, 3-4 times a week, every week, you'll be able to fully regulate all this bacteria. And I'll get into that, when I start talking about what I use, for my oral health here in a few minutes. But that's what they did to snap me out of it. The fatigue went away temporarily. I was off the moldy island and out of the moldy house. The fatigue went away. I was feeling much better. And then I get back, and soon later, my oral health started to go downhill again. And I was kind of sad about that because I thought I was going to go in the right direction. I got everything taken care of other than the rest of the decay. I just needed to get some fillings and stuff. And then my teeth ended up getting way worse and the problems continued. And, the one tooth that was so bad that got extracted, well, I had like 5 or 6 other teeth get that bad within the next 3 months after I had went to the biodentist the first time. And so obviously it's not the biodentist's fault. It's, the decay. You have to tackle all of the decay or it's only going to spread. And once it's spreading, it's hard to reverse. And I'm not saying you can't reverse it because I even reversed it for a small amount of time, but there are just other factors at play for my journey that just didn't work for me. So, I couldn't reverse it. And for most people, when you have tooth decay, once it eats at your enamel and then your dentin, you can't heal it anymore. Some people can. I'm not saying it can't be done. Anything can be healed. I'm a firm believer in that, but that's just the experience for most people. So, once it's to that level, you're probably going to have to get fillings. And there's a lot of options out there for, biocompatible fillings that don't mess with your oral microbiome because some fillings are pretty toxic at traditional dentists. Everything they do is toxic for the most part. And so you even have to go down to the nitty gritty. Oh, what kind of fillings are you going to get? Biodentists offer what's called a biocomp test, a biocompatibility test, which they take like 10 vials of blood, and I've never been big on giving blood, It's the first time I ever did this, actually. And, they took some blood and they test it. They test over 1,000 different types of materials with your blood to see what it reacts with in a negative way or a positive way. And they find out the best dental materials for you. So most biodentists only use 3 materials anyways, and most of which are good for like 90% of people. So if you're a biodentist you end up going to doesn't have a biocom test, don't worry about that, because odds are you'll be fine. Over 90% of people don't have any issues, but due to just my history and my sensitivity with foods and anything that I put in my body, especially when it comes to like oral health, I felt like I needed to take the test because I didn't want to drop all this money on fillings and all this with the wrong type of material that could cause me more issues down the road. So for me, I wanted to like be certain with that, because in those moments when my decay was so bad, I felt so unsafe, like the most unsafe I've ever felt in my life. I felt so vulnerable and so powerless. And I also didn't have like money to go fix it. That's another issue. Most people, you need to go to the biodentist. Well, they don't cover insurance. They don't take insurance, almost every single biodentist, because, insurance ties into big pharma. Insurance companies don't want to cover biodentists because it's just a different business. It's just out of their league. So pretty much everything for a biodentist is usually paid out of pocket. And that was an issue for me because, I'm trying to, at the time, my girlfriend was pregnant and I'm trying to take care of her, trying to take care of myself, trying to work on my business and pay rent, all while I'm pretty much like bedridden. And that made it really hard for me to make enough money to fix my teeth, so it's this like hamster wheel. And I had to push through with all that I had, every last bit of energy my soul had, to get the help that I needed. And it was horrible. I would never wish it upon anyone. And that's why I really stress that if you have any dental issue, tackle it immediately before it gets bad and before it costs $20,000 like it did me. And it's different if you make a ton of money. Like, sure, you can, the more, treatments are more accessible, but for most people, that's not the case. And, so you have to, tackle it right away. If you have any sort of dental decay, even if you have a tiny cavity, get it filled, get it done, because then it won't spread. Get that cavity filled, and then what you want to do is tackle the original problem, which is the oral acidity. So if you tackle those cavities early on, and then you address the root cause, which is oral acidity, and then you have a good oral routine that keeps you slow and steady and healthy, you're going to be great. You're never going to get cavities that way. And so that's pretty much like my experience so far. And recently, what month is it? September as I record this, about 4 months ago is when I got the rest of my teeth fixed. So what they did, I went to a different biodentist in Arizona called Millennium Dental in Scottsdale. It's like a biodentist for like 20 years or whatever. And they're great for the most part. I really enjoyed like pretty much everything they did. I felt pretty cared for. And basically what they did was shave down my teeth. Anywhere there was significant decay, some of the teeth was right on the nerve, like really close to the nerve. So it made it risky to do what they did, but they still did it, and they did a great job, and I ended up, having no issues whatsoever. But what they did was shave down the decay off of my teeth, like physically, they almost with like a Dremel. If you know what a Dremel is, it's kind of like a drill, but they shaved it off, and then they attached a ceramic biocompatible filling over it. So my teeth look perfectly natural and normal right now, even though I have a ton of fillings. And they feel natural too. They feel really good. I don't really notice any difference whatsoever. I lost the ability to like feel certain parts of my teeth after they decayed so much, and I can actually feel them again, which is great. Even though it's not technically like a living organism bone like the tooth, because it's a filling. But it is biocompatible, so those two things work together and it feels normal to me. So I'm really grateful they could do that, because there's a chance if I didn't get the dental issues addressed, I would have had all of my teeth extracted. And that is a disaster. When you have to get all your teeth extracted, putting all those new teeth in, first off, a whole new mouth is like 50 grand. Pretty much anywhere you go, biodentist or normal dentist. And that's a lot of money or just to spend on dental health, and most people don't have anything close to that. And even me, like I struggled so long just to get my teeth fixed. That was half the issue with why my teeth decay got so bad, is because I didn't have the money to fix it. I just didn't, I was sick from mold. I was pretty bedridden from the teeth too, and I couldn't think clearly enough to work on my business to grow my income. I just couldn't. There's no way I could do that. So I have so much compassion for anybody who doesn't have the funds to fully fix their mouth immediately, because, that's like, there's like a certain powerless that comes with that you feel. And I don't wish that upon anyone. I really believe that making money is so important, because then you can take care of yourself and you can nurture other people. It's not all about money ever. It's about service and quality of life. But in today's modern world, like, if you don't have money, you probably can't do either of those things to the fullest potential. They did 4 sessions on me at the biodentist in Scottsdale, Arizona. What they did was, like I said, shave the teeth down and coat them over in the ceramic. And then they did that 4 times. So each quadrant of my mouth, they started with the bottom right. And what they did was give me a shot of what I believe to be carvocaine to numb my mouth. And I have a pretty strong body when it comes to like substances. Like, I usually need like a higher dose of anything to feel it. And they had to give me like 12 shots one of the times that I got, the fillings, one of the sessions, because I just kept eating all the shots and I could feel everything they were doing. And the shots were huge. I mean, I hate shots. Growing up, I would get vaccinated and I would be screaming. It was just horrible. I hate shots still to this day. I'll always hate shots. I would hate giving blood. It's not, fuck all that. Like, I'm not about any of that. And obviously that comes from traumatic experiences. That's a big deal for me. That really messed me up. I really think the vaccines messed up my health even more than how I was birthed and raised with the lack of nutrition. And this isn't like, to get at my parents or anything like that. Like, no, like, literally everybody was raised this way. They didn't know better. If they did, it would be a different story. But since they didn't, they're innocent. And I think most parents have good intentions. But, I was eating all the shots they gave me. And the shots were the worst part of the whole treatment, because you get these 2-inch shots in your gums. I mean, that shit was horrible. I wouldn't wish that on anyone. And I hope that whoever is listening to this, your teeth never get to that point. And hopefully you can listen to the things that I have to say and the wisdom that I've learned, so you never have to get to that point. So you can take great care of yourself and just be healthy, because that's really the goal here. Before I had gotten the treatments, I was going through hell. I mean, I could not sleep. I had hardly any appetite. I was in so much pain every day and night. I couldn't breathe properly. That's one thing. If you have a lot of tooth decay, it can really mess up your breathing, because all that bacteria goes right in your lungs. And if you have no filter, if you have no dentin and enamel to like cover that, it just goes right in your lungs, which goes right in your bloodstream. And, if it's really bad, the issue, it can totally kill you. And, that's not something to, like, take lightly. Like, it's a really big issue. And, people die of dental issues all the time. And sometimes they don't even know that it was a dental issue, even like a heart attack. If somebody has a heart attack, well, if you have an infection in your mouth, or if you have gingivitis and you have gum disease, well, guess what? That causes heart disease, not just calcification, not just the standard American diet and the Western way of living. Stress, which causes acidity in the mouth, and gum disease in high amounts of stress is going to cause heart disease potentially. Most people who have heart disease have gum disease. And, that's just kind of how it works. So when you take really good care of your mouth and your oral health and your gums, your heart and your lungs are actually going to be able to not have such a burden on them. They won't have to work harder to keep you alive to manage all this bacteria. And also, when your liver and colon are backed up, that can also cause heart issues because your heart can't pump from your liver properly, but that's a whole nother issue. And, detoxing the liver is one thing that's important. When I was living in Kauai going through all of this, I did this thing called the Zen cleanse, which I absolutely love. That's the best cleanse I've ever done. And I've done so many types of fasting, dry fast, liquid fast, juice fast, water fast, smoothie fasts, watermelon fast, like pretty much anything you can think of. More than likely I've done it and I've tried it and I've experimented. And by far my favorite cleanse that is light on the body and actually like life-giving is Zen cleanse. So they have like 7 different cleanses, I believe now. Their website's a little bit overwhelming, but when I first got into this, my friend had told me about it, and she, works with this company. And so I did their small intestinal cleanse. And the reason why I'm talking about this is because when you detox, your mucoid plaque and gallstones, which I'll get to in a minute, you actually can regulate minerals better. Your liver is going to function properly. A lot of times, cavities and oral acidity is perpetuated because there's an impaired liver function. So if you address a lot of these root causes, to the oral acidity, the organ malfunctions, you're really going to set yourself up to be in a better position, especially if you also adopt a really great oral care health routine. And so I did the Zen cleanse. It basically is a 1-day enzyme cleanse, which rids you of all your mucoid plaque. And if you don't know what mucoid plaque is, beware looking it up because it's so gross. Everybody has mucoid plaque for the most part. If you haven't pooped it out, you got it. That's the way I like to look at it. Especially if you're older. Kids might not have it, but if you're an adult and you've never pooped that shit out, guess what? You got it. Even if you're skinny. Some people are super skinny and they still got loads of mucoid plaque. Your weight doesn't really matter. There is a correlation sometimes there with that, but not always. I'm a pretty lightweight, athletic, slim type of body, and I still had a ton of mucoid plaque. When I did that cleanse, I pooped out 3 or 4 pounds of mucoid plaque and a worm. And a lot of times, parasites and worms are actually within the mucoid plaque, so you can't actually see them. So I'm sure I pooped out more. I mean, if you've never pooped out parasites, gallstones, or mucoid plaque, you can rest assured you have all of them. I don't care what your health history is. If you've been vegan, if you ate perfect, whatever, you likely got them because there's really no way to escape any of these things long term, no matter what you do. And so all you can do is be aware of how they're caused and address them and do the right things to prevent them from, accumulating. So I did this Zen cleanse, small intestinal cleanse. I think it's called the One, or the One cleanse. It's like a red and black box on their site. But I ridded myself of mucoid plaque. And a couple days later, I did their liver cleanse. And that gets rid of liver stones or gallstones, which get backed up in your bile ducts. And, your liver is full of all these bile ducts and stones, which could be excess cholesterol, calcification, toxins, forever chemicals. Those end up turning into gallstones. Like I said earlier, all those toxins go somewhere. All those things you've accumulated, they go somewhere. And it's possible to dissolve gallstones without pooping them out. I think it's important to go that route as well, but it's also important to flush your liver. And I never really knew how important this was until I did it, because when I did the liver cleanse the next few days after, which is basically you're supposed to do it after the small intestine cleanse so you can clear your colon, so your detox pathway of your colon and your intestines are more open and fluid. When you end up detoxing your liver, it makes the liver cleanse actually easier and more gentle if you detox the colon first. So I did that, and then I got to the liver cleanse, and then I pooped out all these gallstones, and that was really so uncomfortable, the night that I did it. Both of these are 1-day cleanses, by the way. That's another reason I love them, because you don't have to do this crazy stressful fast where you have to restrict calories and increase your cortisol, both of which prevent detoxing. So I don't know. I think, as an experienced faster, I can tell you right now that most fasting is total bullshit. It's a different story when your body's fully nurtured and you're really healthy and strong. Some fasting is great. But for most people, it's probably the worst idea to, help your health. And there's so many other avenues and cleanses that are way more effective than restricting calories and increasing your stress. Because if you're increased in stress from fasting and doing one of these long cleanses, guess what? You're not going to cleanse. Cortisol blocks detoxing. So you can't cleanse if you're stressed. You just can't. The best cleansing comes when you're relaxed, you're healthy, and you're happy. And most people won't say that. Most people say, oh, you got to do this crazy cleanse. You got to fast to purge your demons. It's no, that shit is delusional. And that's going to keep you in a perpetual cycle of chronic issues, like it did me. And I had to learn all this stuff the hard way. So I ended up doing the liver cleanse. I pooped out a bunch of gallstones, and it was the worst smell I think I've ever smelled doing that cleanse. You basically drink warm tea of enzymes all day long for both cleanses, but the difference between the colon and the liver one is you drink this olive oil grapefruit drink before you go to bed. And what that does is basically saturate your whole belly and liver in oil and opens all your ducts so you can poop out those stones, because normally they'd be too big to poop out and they could potentially get stuck, which is a whole other story. If somebody's really toxic, that's a risk for doing the liver cleanses. So you want to address that potential issue and do what you can to prevent that, which I can get into on another podcast. And you guys can always reach out to me on Instagram. So I ended up pooping out all these gallstones, some of which were like nickels, like the size of like nickels. And, I've done so much detoxing already. So I ended up pooping out all these gallstones, hundreds of them, by the way, like handfuls of these stones, most of which look like tiny little like pebbles that you'd see at like the bottom of a riverbed. It's kind of what they look like super teeny. And the bigger ones go up to the size of like a nickel or a quarter. Luckily, I didn't have any quarter-sized ones, but I definitely had a few nickel ones. And it was pretty crazy. I felt like $1 billion, even more, after I did that cleanse. I felt so energized, like this burden, like this energy was like ridden from me. And the reason why I bring this up is because that alone, I feel, helped my oral health so much, because my body didn't feel burdened by all these toxins. It could then address different issues within itself. So if your body has accumulated so much toxins, then what it's doing is it's trying to keep you afloat. But if you flush all that stuff out, then you are afloat, and then you can, try to get on the boat or get on the raft, and like you're not just floating, surviving in this like ocean of the unknown, so you can get some more structure going and things like that. So my oral health definitely improved after I did those cleanses. But then, like I said earlier, after that, since I already had a lot of decay, it kept spreading. And even if you do all these cleanses, if you don't address the decay, it can still spread. I have the Zen cleanse on my website. You can use my code SHER for pretty much any products that I mention on this podcast. Just rule of thumb, I'll say it to remind people. You can just use my code SHER. Pretty much every product I recommend on here, I'll have a discount code for you guys. I think you get 5% off the Zen cleanse if you use my code. It's just my name. It's like a universal code on whichever products that I speak of. I'll likely have a code for them. And if I really believe in a company, obviously I'm probably going to get a code for them, because I like to support them and I like to be supported for also sharing. Nothing wrong with that. And I really wish somebody could have told me all of this stuff. Like I wish I had this podcast like 3 years ago. I really wish I had all this info 3 years ago. I wish somebody could have just given me the silver platter, like this podcast is, to help me with all the things that I was experiencing, because I had felt so alone for so long, and it took a lot of hard lessons and, a lot of suffering to learn all this stuff and kind of just develop a routine and to really know what it is that I'm talking about. All this comes from experience. It doesn't really just come out of my ass. It doesn't come out of just nowhere. It comes from experience, comes from connection. And, those cleanses definitely helped. And I ended up doing them again after I got my teeth fixed, or around the time I got my teeth fully fixed, a couple of months later, at the biodentist in Arizona. And this time I pooped out way more gallstones, probably like 40 nickel-sized ones. And my liver function has improved so much since then, and it's a little bit easier, actually a lot easier, to take care of my oral health. So when you address all the root issues, it's going to make, your health become easier to maintain. There's a lot of recommendations that I have, so I might jump all over the place talking about this. I have some notes here that I'm going to reference. So I learned some things from friends who are into holistic health, like the Zen cleanse. That stuff's great. All of that is on my website, by the way. You can go to shareongodsing.com. That's my current website, which I plan on keeping for a while, because I'm working on some new sites and stuff. But all my products that I recommend are all on that site, and I'm constantly updating it. I'm going to redo the site to make it look a lot better, but the Zen cleanse and pretty much all the products I'm speaking of here are all on there. Otherwise, you can just DM me and I can share them with you if you can't find them or if you have trouble finding them. So I learned things from friends like the Zen cleanse. I learned things from biodentists that I didn't know. I already was studying holistic dentistry for a long time. Even before I had cavities, I came across, I think, the company's Living Libations. I don't really like their products, but I like the book that they wrote about dental health. They have some really great recommendations in there, and I guess I'll start from there. The biggest thing I like from them is this thing called a sulca brush. So it's a special gum brush. I got a question about receding gums and proceeding gums, and there are people in my comments saying, oh, you can't heal that. You absolutely can heal that. I wouldn't listen to half the shit you read online. Don't even believe me, experiment. Find out what works for you. This is the beauty of discernment. But most of the stuff online is total bullshit. And I say that so confidently. And it's not safe to, blindly believe things online. You have to, study things yourself, experience things firsthand, in first person to gain discernment. When it comes to literally anything, obviously you can learn a lot from others, but you can learn the most from being discerning and through experience. And so I learned a lot of things from the biodentist. I learned things from the Living Libations book. I forget what it's called, but I think it's just called Guide to Holistic Dentistry. But the sulca brush is what I was talking about. It's basically a brush for your gums. And so you can get clove extract. I wouldn't recommend any type of essential oils for your mouth. I don't like essential oils personally. Some people say you can consume them and use them if they're combined with fat, but I don't know. Something about essential oils just rubbed me the wrong way. And they definitely mess with your oral biofilm. This is basically, how your mouth works. You need to be able to penetrate that biofilm that these bacteria have. This is like the protective film of the bad bacteria in the mouth that causes cavities. It needs to be penetrated and then neutralized. And so essential oils mess with that process. And I'll get into the two things that can penetrate the biofilm in a safe way shortly here. But with the sulca brush, if you have receding gums, if you have proceeding gums, that's where your gums grow over your teeth. That's what I've dealt with. I mean, I've had both. And so again, I'm speaking from experience here. When I had receding gums, that's when your gums are pushed away from the teeth. That could be a vitamin K27 deficiency. That could be a magnesium deficiency. There's really a lot of things. It could also be a vitamin E deficiency or even vitamin C. Like most people are definitely deficient in the fat-soluble vitamins. Vitamin C is water-soluble, but just the main vitamins. Most people are totally deficient in those things. And then the numbers we're given when we do blood work to test, the levels of those nutrients are also super off. A lot of them are way under what they should be. So they might tell you, oh, all your blood work's good, but it's really not. There's more factors at play here. You could be needing way more magnesium because, for example, the standard magnesium in vitamin E is way lower than what it should be and what it used to be. So they've changed all these, nutrition things up, and it's very confusing. So ultimately, treat your body like this, class of study. Really study your body, its needs. Study what works, what doesn't work. Study where your body is currently at. And so with the proceeding and receding gums, those can be addressed in a multitude of ways. I would get on vitamin C. I would get on magnesium bicarbonate. I have a tutorial I'm going to be uploading on how to make magnesium bicarbonate soon. I have an old video, but I'm going to remake it with some new tips. And you can get that from Crucial 4. You have to make it at home. I also have a code with Crucial 4. Just Sher. It's also on my website. You guys can check out my site and then find the magnesium hydroxide on there, and you can make it at home. But basically, drinking magnesium bicarbonate, also swishing it around in your mouth can really help the gums, can really help proceeding or receding gums. And vitamin E as well. You can actually brush your gums with vitamin E with the sulca brush, and that can get rid of proceeding or receding gums as well. You can also do a liquid K27 supplement from Lifeblood is the one that I recommend. Also have a code with them. Also on my website, again. My website showcases all these products in an organized fashion so I don't overwhelm anyone. And that's also great. Getting that on your teeth and around your teeth can help. But the vitamin E is probably the most effective treatment. Even for normal people who have healthy gums and healthy teeth, I would totally recommend swishing vitamin E. The one from Lifeblood, they have a tincture, not in capsules, but a tincture. Swishing that around your mouth and even brushing your gums with the sulca brush with the thick vitamin E oil. Because that's going to saturate your gums and promote tissue health. It's going to promote blood flow. It's going to promote more saliva in your mouth, which is ultimately what you're trying to do. You really want to increase the amount of healthy saliva in your mouth because that is ultimately the case of preventing cavities and any type of oral issue, because it's your saliva that's supposed to regulate and take out all the bad bacteria and keep it all in balance. That's the oral microbiome. That's how that works. So if you have a lack of saliva, you have a lack of oral health. And it really just comes down to that. And if you have a lack of saliva, then you're going to be promoting oral acidity. And so all these things are really tied into one. And back to what I was saying about essential oils, you can use a clove extract and brush with the sulca brush, or you could do vitamin E or both. That can also really help those issues out. And then if you have receding gums, be really gentle. Sometimes if you brush your teeth too hard, that can cause receding gums, or sometimes proceeding gums. It just depends. And so those are two sensitive things that can happen to people. But both of those can be addressed. I've had both. I've cured both. Right now, I deal with a little bit of proceeding gums, and I can prevent that just by brushing them enough. Especially if you have proceeding gums, the sulca brush will help. But it'll also help reseeding, and it'll help keep your gums into balance. You don't want your gums growing too much over your teeth or growing too far away from your teeth. You want them perfectly balanced. You want to keep all the components of your oral health system, the microbiome, in harmony with each other. And that's how you keep the oral acidity from overgrowing, is by taking really good care of your mouth. So that's the first major key that I learned, was the sulca brush. That's a big one. Most biodentists don't even know what that is. And it's SULCA brush. You can get it on Amazon. I don't think I have that product on my site. I'm gonna be adding a lot more because there's a lot covered. But if it isn't on my website, just take this transcript of this or try to hear what I'm saying and spell it out and go research it and look it up, or you can DM me on Instagram. The second thing I would recommend is a tongue scraper. Most people know about this tool. It's a pretty commonly used tool now, even in traditional dentistry. It's basically a scraper that gets rid of the film on your tongue. Some people wake up with a film on their tongue, like a white film. That's usually like yeast or candida. Some people say it's other things, but let's just say, for lack of better terms, it's just a film or a bacteria buildup. And so that's not normal. You don't want to have that. The less stuff you have to scrape off your tongue every morning and night, the better. That's a good indicator of oral health, or the lack of, because if you have a lot of film on your tongue, you probably have a lot of film and plaque on your teeth too. And so if you're eating excess carbs, if you are not in, homeostasis in your body, that can cause that film. If you're high stress, that can also cause it. But if you're nourished, you're grounded, you're eating right, you're taking the right supplements, you're drinking good water, you're getting good sleep, most importantly, you probably won't have really any film on your tongue. But even then, I still think that it's safe to use the tongue scraper. I use it every day in the morning and at night, just right when I brush my teeth. And yeah, that works great. I would highly recommend that for anyone. You want to keep your tongue clean because you want to be able to keep a good environment on your tongue so you can have the most saliva. You don't want all of that bacteria mixing with that saliva, which makes it harder for the saliva to penetrate the teeth and the gums and yada, yada, yada. So it's really about cleaning your mouth and addressing all angles. The next thing is the best toothbrush. So I am still experimenting with this. Some dentists say that electric toothbrushes are king, and I really have very little experience with electric toothbrushes. My whole life I've used manual. It is shown that it removes up to 500% more plaque by using an electric brush, so I will be switching to one of those, and I'll be letting you guys know which one I do. I believe it's the Philips one. There's this guy named Restoration Dentistry on Instagram. He has an amazing cavity guide. I think it's a paid guide, but I would recommend anyone listening goes and gets that. He has a great page on Instagram too. He mentions this, and he has a list of the best toothbrushes. So that would be my current reference for the best toothbrush. I'm still personally experimenting, but that's what I would recommend if anybody is wanting to look for the best brush, because I'm most likely going to be grabbing the toothbrush that he recommends. And then for toothpaste and mouthwash, that's a whole nother thing. So some people say bacteria builds up on a toothbrush, which I agree with. And this is an important factor because you don't want to be brushing your teeth with the same bad bacteria every day that's causing cavities and oral acidity, right? That doesn't make much sense. So it's really important to, throw out your toothbrush probably once a month. Some people say 3 months, but I would say once a month because that bacteria builds up quick, especially if you're in a super humid environment. I was in Hawaii and everything built bacteria. Even my clothes would mold. Everything would mold. So it's really important because even if you can't see mold, which is like the furthest growth that becomes physical that you can see, even if you can't see mold and growth like that, there's still microscopic bacteria growing on the toothbrush that you use every day. So make sure you're changing that once a month. Some people say 3 months, like I said, but I would do it once a month. That's my personal preference. And with toothbrushing, the best toothpaste is also up for discussion. I've used so many toothpastes, like seriously so many, like dozens upon dozens, and I've hated them all. None of them helped my mouth feel super clean until recently. And the toothpaste I'm currently using is this nano silver aura gel. It's more like a tooth gel than it is like a toothpaste. It only has like 3 or 4 ingredients. Also, I really like that because most of these holistic toothbrushes are BS, and if you don't want to use fluoride, which I wouldn't personally recommend, you don't really have, there's just a bunch of shit, and even the supposed healthy toothpastes that could even be worse than fluoride, because it causes a lot of these things they use in all these holistic products cause calcification, just like fluoride does. So it's like, you pick your poison, basically. Why would you want to pick your poison? You're trying to heal, So the best tooth gel / toothpaste that I have found, Elementa. So this brand makes silver products. And if you guys have followed me for a while, you've probably heard me say that I don't like nano silver. I don't like colloidal silver. I don't like those products. In some cases, sure. But for the most part, I steer away from all things silver because it's toxic. And so are a lot of these metals that people, are taking nowadays. And with silver, this company has really researched this, and they have the only version of nano silver that isn't toxic, and they've proved it. And I'm a hard nut to crack, and they proved it to me. So I definitely believe in what they're doing, and especially since I'm only using this nano silver tooth gel for my mouth, I'm not swallowing it, like taking it internally every day, so it's not causing fibrosis and issues like it would if you were taking nano silver, because that's what it does. It causes fibrosis, scar tissue in your liver and things like that. So you don't want any of that stuff. But with this nano silver, it's different. It's actually extracted naturally from plants. I'm not sure which plants, don't quote me on that, but it's a plant-based nano silver. And, plant-based is a big buzzword and all that, but I think that it is cool in this case because it is non-toxic. And what it does is it penetrates the biofilm and it's able to neutralize oral acidity, basically uprooting the bad bacteria each time you brush your teeth. And so instead of just all these random herbs in these holistic toothpastes that you're kind of just playing Russian roulette with, you actually have a backed and studied thing that really does help your mouth. Most toothpastes that I've used literally have done nothing for me. When they claim that they, reverse bad breath, all this, my breath is still horrible. And I'm still dealing with bad breath even after I got all my teeth fixed. So there's really levels to the tooth issue. So Elementa's silver products, they have mouthwash and toothpaste, both of which I highly, highly, highly recommend. It's what I'm currently using. I don't have a code for them yet, but I'm going to try to get a discount code just so I can save y'all some money. But I do not currently have one. So you go to Elementa Silver products on Google, just look that up, and you'll find them. They have the best mouthwash. All of their products have nano silver in it. And so when you do that mouthwash, it's going to neutralize the oral acidity. It's also a super high pH, so it brings the pH of your saliva up, which is needed. Most people have a super acidic saliva that's out of balance. I believe the saliva is supposed to be only slightly acidic, not very much acidity at all. And once it becomes too acidic, then it leads to caries disease or gum disease, which is cavities, which is a disruption of the oral microbiome. The best toothpaste, I would say, is definitely the silver toothpaste gel that Elementa sells, as well as the best mouthwash being their mouthwash as well. And the second best mouthwash, I would say, is ozone. So earlier I said I would get more into ozone, and here's where I'm going to. So there's two things that can penetrate, two known things at least. I'm sure there's more out there that have yet to be discovered. But there's two main things that are currently known in biodentistry that neutralize oral acid and penetrate the biofilm. So those two things are nanosilver and ozone. So if you have both of those in your oral care routine, the likelihood of you getting caries disease, which is dental decay, cavities, is a lot less. Or even completely out the window, altogether. Your likelihood will go to almost like zero in most cases. So, like I said, all these things are and curable. So these are the two things that I would recommend for mouthwash. You want to do ozone water, which you can get a water ozonator for cheap. It's debatable how effective those are, but they work for the most part. Don't stand near the machine when it ozonates your water because you don't want to breathe in ozone. It's an irritant to the lungs. It's not necessarily toxic, but it's definitely not good for your lungs. And if you ever get ozone in your mouth or you breathe it in on accident, you start to cough, the antidote is vitamin C. So if you're doing ozone and you begin doing ozone therapy, that's really important to know because it's kind of inevitable you're going to get a whiff of ozone, which isn't the end of the world. Just make sure you got, protection from the irritation that it can cause your lungs. And so ozone is basically oxygen, to my knowledge. I could be wrong about some of this. I'm still learning. Overall, I know it's one of the best things you can do, but when it comes to the nitty-gritty details, I might not get everything accurate, so make sure to do your own research. So from what I've learned, ozone is an extra molecule of oxygen. And what that does is basically oxygenate and increase your oxygen uptake wherever you apply the ozone. So if you're doing that in your mouth, for example, it's going to neutralize all the bad bacteria that can only live in an environment that doesn't have oxygen, which is the case for pretty much all parasites and bad bacteria. So oxygen is a huge component. Deep breathing, nose breathing, diaphragmatic breathing is really important. You really got to consciously breathe as much as you can to fully regulate your health and your minerals and oxygen even, because that's your life force ultimately. Everybody can go without food for a couple of days, but nobody can go without breath. So that's an important factor, oxygen. And so ozone is a good way to increase those oxygen levels to also improve your everyday breathing. If you're doing ozone treatments at home, which I highly recommend for your mouth and everything else health-wise, you can really regulate a lot of this stuff and you can breathe better during the day, each day, because of the ozone treatments as well. It's not just directly when you do the treatment, it's also post-treatment. So nanosilver and ozone are the best mouthwashes, and I'm talking about ozone water. There's many ways to do ozone. There's ear insufflations, there's ozonated water, there is a mouthpiece, which is super important. That's what they use at biodentists. You can use that at home. That's the mouthpiece that the biodentist I went to in Texas used to be able to decrease my oral bacteria by over 80% in one session. So if you have that at home and you're doing that all the time, you're going to be good. You're going to be pretty solid. That was from one session, guys, over 80%. And bacteria is always growing and doing its thing. So if you do that all the time, you're going to completely be able to manage any type of bad oral bug bacteria that's causing caries disease or dental disease, which is decay. And that's a huge component. Like I said earlier, I wish I knew this stuff back then because it would have saved me years of pain. But again, I don't regret it, even though I went through so much physical pain and emotional pain, because I learned so much, and I get to share all of this with you guys right now. Another really important thing, like I said, is oxygen. So nose breathing specifically, if you're a mouth breather, that alone can cause cavities. I have a slightly deviated septum, and just almost habitually, I've been a mouth breather most of my life up until the past few years, where I've really been tackling that subconscious habit of mouth breathing. And mouth breathing can cause oral acidity because you're not getting enough oxygen. You don't get enough oxygen when you mouth breathe. And if you're mouth breathing in your sleep, also, that's a huge issue because now your ability to regulate oxygen is kind of dampened because you're not getting enough oxygen. So if you're not getting enough oxygen, that can cause oral acidity or acidity in general in your mouth. But I'm focusing on oral acidity. If you're breathing in your mouth and your mouth is open, well, your mouth is going to dry out. And it's going to prevent saliva from spreading throughout your mouth because it's being constantly dried by your breathing. And you don't want that to happen. You want to have your mouth closed with a lot of saliva and breathing through your nose as well at the same time. And when you're breathing through your nose, that actually helps you produce saliva. One thing I love using at night because I've had the mouth breathing issue, especially when I sleep, by the way, if you have a mouth breathing issue at all in the day, chances are you also do it when you're sleeping. So you really want to optimize your sleep because cortisol as well, by lack of sleep and lack of quality sleep, I mean, like if you're mouth breathing in your sleep, you're going to have elevated cortisol more than you would if you nose breathed at night. So if you have a chronic mouth breathing issue when you're sleeping, you're going to have chronically more cortisol and stress hormones in your body, which create ammonia gas in your gut. And all those things, those gases, those toxic gases created through stress, can actually rise into your mouth, cause oral acidity and cavities. So just not sleeping right can cause your mouth to be acidic. So low stress, getting enough sleep. One thing I love to use is mouth tape. There's a brand out there, and I've tried a lot of these mouth tapes. It's called Somnifix, and you basically put tape over your lips, and there's a small breathing hole, so it's not like you can't breathe out of your mouth if you, you can if you need to, is what I'm saying. And that, what it does is close your mouth, so you're forced to breathe through your nose when you're sleeping at night. And this results in deeper sleep, more oxygenation when you wake up, less fatigue when you wake up, deeper dreams, and likely more moisture in your mouth too because you're breathing through your nose. So that's something that's really helpful. I hated the idea of taping my mouth before going to sleep. That sounds absolutely bonkers, but I ended up doing it and I love it. So I do it pretty much every night. I just ran out. I got to get some more, but pretty much every night I'm always using that because it really does work. So I put that on before I go to bed, and before I go to bed, my dental routine would look something like this. Brush my teeth, floss. I would recommend normal floss for most people, unless they have a really healthy mouth and they'd use like a hydro flosser, which is like a water flosser, like a water pick. But in pretty much every case, I would recommend doing a water flosser. I think it's called a water pick or a hydro flosser, plus normal floss once to twice a day, preferably twice. You really want to be more aggressive if you have any type of oral issue. Like for me, I'm working on creating the habits to where I do this stuff like very often because I feel like even still I don't do it enough. And but even though my mouth feels way better. And so ideally, I would recommend doing that twice a day. And then when you go to bed, brush your teeth with the Elementa Silver Gel, do their mouthwash, floss, tongue scrape, put your mouth tape on, and go to bed. And that would basically be my nighttime routine. You can also put hydrogen peroxide in the hydro flosser, so you can get that peroxide in your gums that can also neutralize the oral acidity and kill the bad bugs that live in the gums. And so these bugs, they live in the gums and it spreads to the enamel on your teeth, and then it creates plaque. And so it's basically like this system that breaks down your teeth. And if you can regulate that and minimize that, that's going to increase your odds of having a strong, healthy oral microbiome. Another thing that I love that would be maybe even my top tip, and most of you won't expect this, even I didn't expect this until like 2 months ago. I was very surprised that I ended up doing something like this, but it's xylitol gum. I haven't chewed gum since I was like 12, or maybe a little older than that, but a long time ago. And I never thought chewing gum could be a good thing. And so xylitol is a thing that basically neutralizes oral acidity. So you can chew on xylitol gum and it'll keep your mouth alkaline. And I think the dose is 6 grams a day to prevent cavities. And it works like a charm. Like you can feel the difference in your mouth. If you have acidity in your mouth and you feel that acidity, chew on xylitol gum for a day. Just like anytime each piece of gum gets stale, throw it out and pop another one in your mouth. Do that for a day and see how much better your mouth feels. So if you're doing all this stuff, you're chewing the xylitol gum, or you can do mints, by the way, xylitol mints. I personally like the gum way better. It just seems way more effective, but it's good to have both. But if you're doing all this stuff, it's going to be really hard to have dental decay. It's going to be really hard for that to happen if you're doing, at-home ozone treatments. And the brand also I recommend for ozone is Promo Life. There's a lot of brands out there, but pretty much all ozone machines are made by a bigger company called Promo Life, and they have a lifetime warranty on their machine. You can also find them on eBay sometimes, and it's a transferable warranty, so you can still have the warranty and get a machine for cheaper. I would recommend doing that. I don't have a discount code with them yet, but I will in the future. So if you're listening to this in the future, you can use my code Sher for ozone therapy as well from Promo Life. That's the brand that I would recommend. It's the brand that most biodentists use for their ozone machine. So you're basically having the power of that in your own home. And if you're doing the ozone, you're doing the silver, you're brushing your teeth, you're doing all the things, you're grounding, you're taking care of your health, you're eating right. So another thing we're going to get into shortly here is the best foods. If you're eating right, it's going to be hard to, have issues. It's going to be hard to have a consistent oral decay that gets to the point where you need help. It's going to be hard for that ever to manifest. And you want to keep it that way. You want it to be really hard to be unhealthy. You want to focus and embody health every day and feel the blessing of what that really is, because so few people actually feel that. And that's so bizarre to me. Like, most of the world is so sick, they don't even know what health feels like. And that's why the world's so messed up, because everybody is messed up internally. You can't have a healthy world on the outside if everybody's messed up on the inside. And so if you're doing all these things, the odds are gonna be in your favor. Long story short. One more thing, a couple more things actually, that I really love is drinking the right kind of water. So that's another thing beyond breathing and grounding that's going to help you regulate your minerals. I drink Pristine Hydro. I do have a code with them. Sher is my code. You can get 10% off their water filters. They have an undercounter and a portable filter. It basically mimics spring water, and the filter also structures the water, and it has trace minerals of chloride and bicarbonate, which are the naturally occurring organic minerals in spring water. I'm not a big fan of distilled water anymore. In certain cases I am, but I like Pristine Hydro water, and that's what I would recommend to anybody. That's the best filter I know of, and I've tried it. I've been drinking it for, 2.5 years now. Absolutely love it. I actually originally tried their water from their physical store in Laguna Beach a few years back, and I loved it so much that I went and bought the filter right from the store before I had moved to Hawaii. And then I moved to Hawaii with my portable filter that I got from them, which is super cool because it's portable. It comes in a briefcase. You can travel with it. Comes with different attachments to where you can attach it to any sink. And that's the water filter I'd recommend. I'm still drinking that now. I don't really think there's a better filter out there, but if there is, I'll always update it. I'm going to have another episode just on water alone. But that filter has really helped my overall health so much, and I really, really attribute a lot of my improved health to drinking the right water and forming these right habits. So I would definitely recommend Pristine Hydro. You can use Sher for a discount code. You can find them on Instagram or pristinehydro.com. Another thing is a facial routine. So at night, it's really important to hydrate. Some people don't like drinking water before bed because they don't want to wake up and go to the bathroom, which is totally understandable. What I like to do is make sure my skin is hydrated. A lot of people focus on hydrating the internal areas of the body through drinking water and liquids and things like that, but skin is often overlooked. And having moist, plump skin with enough collagen production and vibrance to it, that alone can help your entire internal system. So what I'm getting at here, for example, if you do a facial care routine every night, you put certain high quality plant extracts that don't oxidize, no seed oils or anything, on your face, and you moisturize it, and then you clean your face, and then you keep it moisturized with a sealer of an oil, like tallow or something like that, that's full of K vitamins and nurturing vitamins for your skin. That's actually going to help your oral health. So I noticed when I was in the worst pain ever, I did my facial care routine, and my girlfriend would help me this. She actually put me on this, and I swear by it now. Facial routine is so important, regardless of if you have acne or anything like that. It's just about keeping your skin hydrated and young to where there's collagen and blood flow, because most people's skin is so stagnant and it's so full of gunk and they don't even know it. And so keeping my face moisturized and hydrated used to bring my pain levels down so much when I would be in the thick of it with the severe pain from the tooth decay. Actually hydrating my face with tallow, vitamin E, rose and cucumber hydrosols, and things like that, that really helped my pain, because what it did was almost put my skin at ease, which was so inflamed from the nerves in my teeth and the gums in my mouth that were so inflamed. It actually bring the inflammation down and hydrate them more so my mouth wouldn't feel as dry. And you can do that from the outside in just by having a good facial routine. I really love this brand, Averaglow, which my girlfriend showed me. They don't use any essential oils, which I love. It's all plant extracts. I combine their products with animal fats. So they don't have any animal fat products. All their stuff is like plant-based, whatever. So I do my own thing, and I actually have the Averaglow skincare products with animal fats. So I throw on tallow or ghee or emu oil after I use Averaglow products. And so what that does is prevent any oxidation and things like that, because I don't want to use a bunch of like essential oils or plant extracts on my skin just to have it age down the road because it oxidizes. So I'm able to really minimize that because there's no essential oils or seed oils. And then I combine it, and that's my facial routine currently. I really love how I feel. My face looks way younger, no freckles. Again, a lot of these facial routines cause freckles and oxidation. Freckles can be caused by oxidation and things like that. And another really important thing is vitamin E on the face. My favorites are emu oil, vitamin E, tallow, and then like rose water, and some of these products that Averaglow has. Their hydrosols from Averaglow are really good. They're deeply hydrating, way more than just rose water would be, so I highly recommend those. And just an overall skincare routine, that's going to help your body function a lot better. I almost forgot to mention my favorite brand of xylitol gum is called Zellies. I'm still experimenting with the xylitol gum, but that's my favorite one. I chew it pretty much all day, and it helps me so much. Helps me keep a clear mind, because when your oral health is acidic and you have oral acidity, you're not going to be speaking as fluently as you might if you had a healthy mouth. It's so emotional or emotionally connected, and it's all one big system. So if you are having trouble speaking your truth, you might have oral acidity. Like there's levels to this stuff. There really is. So I think that all angles, like I said in the beginning of the podcast, should be considered. And so that's pretty much my story, everything that I've experienced. Now we're going to jump into just the Q&A. We're going to knock these out really quick, and then that should be the end of the podcast. So first question, any advice on keeping your teeth healthy while expecting? So tooth health, if you guys didn't know, for pregnant women is extremely important. Most women actually get cavities, or many women, I'm not sure if it's most women, but many women get cavities and have tooth issues after they give birth or during pregnancy, because they're using so much energy, their stress is increased, they're using so many minerals and things like that. So you want to be eating right. We're going to go over the best foods right now to eat as well, because I experienced this with my partner Jenny. I had to really do my best to nurture her physically with the right foods when she was pregnant, because I didn't want her to have any issues. She's always had pretty much perfect oral health her whole life, which she's been super blessed with. She didn't grow up drinking tap water, or bathing in it either, which is a miracle. Most people, it's the complete opposite. So, she has a pretty good foundation. So, but even for her, pregnancy still can take a lot out of her, and birthing can take a lot out of a woman. So I would focus on getting the right amount of like really good produce, fruits. Women tend to eat more greens as well. So make sure you're getting really good greens. Probably not from a supermarket. If you don't have access to anything else, that'll do. But you want to get things right from the farm. As much food as you can, no matter what type of food it is. I would focus on eating a lot of salads with healthy fats. You want to get a lot of saturated fat, vitamin K27. Go for the grass-fed butter, the pastured eggs, grass-fed meats, grass-fed steak. Organs, if you don't like doing the straight up organs and eating them like that, take the capsules. I'm a big fan of like eating beef liver, because that really helps. That's like the best iron supplement, especially for pregnant women. A lot of women who eat this way when they're pregnant have perfect health during pregnancy and great births. Like people who are deficient, they have calcified placentas instead of a really healthy placenta. And Jenny had the healthiest placenta I've ever seen. I've seen like videos of like healthy examples of placentas, and my partner Jenny, when we had our baby, her placenta was like a whole nother level of healthy, and she ate perfectly when she was pregnant. We did have some high stress for sure, but she still ate well, and the placenta came out great. So I'm speaking from experience on this. Also, high quality fruit, doing all the things that I mentioned here, like as many of the things that you can that I mentioned here for your overall oral health would definitely be what I recommend. And then taking the right supplements, make sure you're taking K27, vitamin E, magnesium bicarbonate. Those are like your best friends when it comes to overall health and oral health. Shilajit as well is really great, but only if you've already taken Shilajit before pregnancy. I've heard it's not good. Always consult your body and wherever you go for your health information, and use your discernment. Jenny personally took Shilajit, but that was only because she took it before pregnancy. So if you're used to taking Shilajit, definitely go for it when you're pregnant. But if you haven't taken it before, probably scratch that one and just focus on vitamin E and things like that. So that's what I would do for keeping healthy teeth while expecting. Next question. I was told that I need a root canal. How do I heal that? So I would never recommend root canals under any circumstance. You're better off getting the tooth extracted if it's that bad. Believe it or not, I saw this biodentist and he was talking about root canals. And pretty much every root canal he's ever done, there's been a physical parasite. Not just like the microscopic bugs that cause dental disease, but a physical parasite inside the root canal. Because what it does is create like a burrow for real physical parasites to live, even worms, very small worms. So, and among all the other issues that root canals cause. So I would not go that route no matter what. No biodentist is going to tell you to get a root canal. It's just not in their protocol. Next question. How do you naturally heal cavities? Pretty much everything that I've said here is your best bet. Some people say you can coat pearl powder on your cavities. That never did anything for me, but it might be worth a shot. I'm not a big fan of hydroxyapatite, which is what pearl powder is. That's not the type of calcium that your teeth are. It's just not. That's not the most bioavailable type of calcium. I used to be so big on hydroxyapatite, but that's really not the best thing to do. So I would go for, I believe it's calcium acetate, if that's how you say it. And that's also in the Elementa tooth gel that I recommended. So pretty much, if you want to naturally heal cavities, I would do everything that I recommended, and you should be good to go. But some people don't heal, even if they do it all right. So if you're not healing, go get it fixed. Find a local biodentist, research biodentist in my country, biodentist in my state. If you can't find one, you're going to have to travel. If you're in Europe, I know that Turkey has a lot of great biodentists for a good price. If you're in America, there's a lot of biodentists pretty much in every state, so you're in luck when it comes to that. But if they're not healing, doing all this stuff, go to the dentist, get it fixed. Even if you are doing this stuff, still go to the dentist. I wouldn't solely try to take it all in your own hands, because I did that and it didn't work for me. Sure, it might work for you. I'm not saying that it won't. All I'm saying is that go to a nice biodentist who has so much experience, who's familiar with all the things that I'm saying, and they can really help you. They can do an x-ray on your mouth and really go into the nitty-gritty of every single tooth that may or may not need help. And some of you might not be fans of x-rays, but I am in certain cases. I don't think that they're the greatest thing, but when it comes to dental health, absolutely needed, because there's really no way for the dentist to see the quality and health of your teeth without an x-ray. There's just not. Make sure you're taking magnesium, vitamin C, eating all the right foods to curb the radiation, bring some EMF protection with you. Bring one of my pyramids. If you have one of my pyramids, bring the portable Blushield product that I recommend that's on my site. Something. Like, there's ways around it. So x-rays aren't the end of the world. I would not be worried about that at all. How do you find a good dentist? I just answered that question, I believe. So you can really just research local biodentists. And if there's not one near you, find another country or state near you and save up money to go. Had an extraction 4 days ago. Smells like pure death inside of my mouth. How much more? Well, I would really just focus on, neutralizing the oral acidity and being super on top of it. I mean, if you have aggressive oral acidity like me and like I've dealt with, you got to be aggressive back. You got to be aggressive back when you take care of it. How to reverse yellowing. Coconut oil pulling is a great way to do that. You can also there's this tooth solution that I take from my biodentist. It's hydrogen peroxide, and you basically coat it over your teeth and it whitens your teeth. There's also, I'm not sure how safe this is, but there's also, and I've done this before, there's also these blue light therapies that whiten your teeth that work really well, that seem to be pretty harmless. So I would give that a shot if nothing else works, because you're only doing it like once, and that can reverse all your yellowing in like one session. How to figure out when it's too late to reverse cavities? Well, if they're not healing, that would be a good indicator. I would give it maybe a few months to really, go deep and try to do all this stuff yourself. But if it's not working, definitely keep doing what you're doing, but also go to the dentist and go to a biodentist specifically. People are asking, am I vegan? No, I'm not vegan anymore. I stopped being vegan in 2020. Thoughts on tea tree oil, clove oil, and baking soda for oral care? I personally hate tea tree oil. I despise it. Anytime I use it, it just wrecks my body. I've heard that it's like more estrogen producing than soy, and it's just really bad. I wouldn't use it literally for anything. I had a natural shampoo with tea tree oil, and it gave me scabs all over my head. This was like a couple of weeks ago. I hate tea tree oil. I would never recommend it for anything. It's trash. Most essential oils are all trash. I mean, technically they're all trash, but that's definitely what I feel about tea tree oil. I would not recommend it. I would use coconut oil for oil pulling instead of that. Clove oil, I like, but I don't like clove essential oil. I would use clove extract, which is kind of hard to find because the market is so saturated with all these shit essential oil products that are just mass produced, which I tend to really steer away from. So, hey, if anybody listening wants to create a great oral product, make a clove product that's not an essential oil and you'll be a millionaire. It's really that simple. Just market it well, make a good product. I mean, integrity is in high demand. Sifting through all the bullshit and having a product with integrity is in high demand. I believe in that so much. Next question. What do you say about sugar and teeth? Well, this is a controversial opinion. Sugar does not cause cavities. Oral acidity does. Sugar can promote oral acidity if you're not taking care of your body and you're eating too much of it. But overall, sugar is not the cause of cavities. Caries disease, oral acidity is the cause of cavities. Somebody asked, how hard was my journey mentally? It was the hardest thing I've ever been through. It really was, going through all the tooth decay. On my Instagram, I have a before and after photo, and it's gnarly. My teeth were pretty much all black, fully open. Anything that goes in my mouth or I breathe goes right into my lungs and my bloodstream because there's no enamel or dentin protecting my teeth. Oh, it felt like I was being tortured every day and night. I wouldn't sleep, couldn't eat. Yeah, I was just sensitive to everything. Literally anything and everything would bother me. Even just talking to somebody. I was just so sensitive to everything. It was horrible. That's why I really recommend doing as much as you can immediately to get rid of these issues if you have any whatsoever. Even if it's just a small issue, definitely get it taken care of. What can I start doing now to help the process? Well, I would start by doing all the things that I recommended here. Another thing, let's see, more questions. What role do the teeth play in the current flow of your meridian body? So, like I said earlier in the podcast, your teeth are connected to all your organs. Pretty much every major organ has a meridian that goes straight to a specific tooth. You can look up meridian tooth chart and you'll get more information on this, and it shows where everything is all connected. So you can kind of use that to potentially help connect the dots. It won't give you all the answers, but it may help. Did I dodge the x-rays? No, I'm actually not against x-rays in many cases because you can dodge the radiation. You don't need to dodge the x-ray, which can help, but you can definitely dodge the radiation. So do you eat animal-based now? Yes, I would say. I still love eating fruit and produce, but it's more balanced for me now. I mainly eat a lot of animal foods. I eat a lot of steak, a lot of really high-quality eggs. What else do I eat? Pretty much that's basically what I eat. And then greens, fruit, fresh liver, the right supplements. I love smoothies. I love raw milk. That's pretty much how I'm eating right now. I love soup. How to get rid of plaque buildup. So pretty much all of these things are going to help you get rid of plaque buildup. Really brushing your teeth consistently and flossing consistently is what is going to do that the most. Speaking from experience here. And then also eating right. If you're eating a lot of shitty food and you have high levels of calcification in your body, you're going to, in general, have more plaque on your teeth. So I would address that by taking K27 and magnesium, which can reverse the calcification issue and help promote your oral health. And that's pretty much what I would do with that. So that's pretty much all I got. That's been my experience. That's been my journey, what I've learned, what I can recommend. Those are all the questions as well. So if you guys have any more questions, feel free to send me an Instagram DM or an email. I'm always learning, I'm always experimenting, and in the future, I may do an updated podcast. Probably not for a while because I think I got what's needed here, the nitty gritty, really the meat of it. And yeah, this is great doing my first podcast. I'm actually so excited to release this and keep on keeping on with it. I really think that it's going to have such a great impact. And if you guys like the podcast, feel free to subscribe and leave a written review. I know that that really helps the algorithm on the podcast. So definitely do that. I'm always open to feedback, and I really appreciate everybody who took the time to listen to this today. And thanks so much for listening to the Awakened Living podcast. We'll see you next time.